Welcome to the Resilience Report, where each week we share the latest on companies engaging in inspirational solutions for our planet and engage with ecopreneurs and lighthouse leaders disrupting their respective industries in pursuit of better, more resilient business. I'm your host, Lauren Scott. Thank you for joining me as we dive into this week's report. Welcome back, everyone. Today is an extra special Best of 2024 episode of the Resilience Report. For our regular listeners, you know that we like to end every single episode with the same question, which is, what do you think it will take for businesses and leaders to be resilient going forward? This is definitely not an easy question to tackle, but this did not stop our brilliant business leaders and entrepreneurs from sharing their actionable tips and tricks. This episode is going live on Christmas Day, 2024, which is kind of perfect given that each and every one of these conversations has been such a gift in my life this past year. This episode is a heartfelt thank you to all of our listeners and guests for being part of the Resilience Report this past year. Your support, feedback, and desire for positive impact have been like nothing I've ever experienced before. We already have some amazing content lined up for this coming year, a number of episodes already pre-recorded based on your messages and requests, and I can't wait to share more with you over the coming weeks. To kick things off, this first group makes up our most popular podcast category in 2024. In 2023, our top topic was the aviation sector. This year, finance. Interest in the sector seems to be at an all-time high, and our guests certainly deliver on sharing incredible insights on where we're going. Here is what Lauren Ott, Senior Director, Strategic Partnerships at Impact Genome, Mila Craig, Founder and CEO at Milani Inc., Pierre-Laurent Macready, Senior Associate, Private Investment Research at Rally Assets, and Abby Massey, Vice President of Energy Incentives at Taxtaker, had to say.
Resiliency is such an important piece of so much of the work that's happening. And I think for me, what I think is necessary in order for business leaders, in order for anyone who's in this sector of social impact to be able to move forward with resiliency, I think it's going to be an openness to change, an openness to innovation, and a piece of humble pie in understanding that we haven't solved these issues. So perhaps we should pivot and take a new lens in being able to apply what's worked elsewhere to this sector as well. So it's exciting times.
I think we need to be open-minded. Mm-hmm. There is a lot of change going on right now. And I think you need to have a strategy for your individual self or for your business. And that's really as we think of, I know I keep coming back to climate change, but climate change is here already. We're just starting to feel the implications on policies and all of these other elements surrounding not just the physical impacts, right? So, you need to be stopping and thinking, what is my strategy on this? How am I going to manage my business? Do I need to pivot? Do I need to do something? We need to think about AI, artificial intelligence. It too is here. Income inequality is here. It's dividing society. So these are some of the issues that I think leaders really need to be considering. And if you're not, then you are not going to be resilient in the next 10 years. So really having a strategy on how you're going to manage these types of issues is key. And then you need to have the courage to move on that strategy as well. But that would probably be my biggest thing is we are on the cusp of a very significant shift in markets, in clients, in demand, et cetera. And you need to be well prepared for that transition.
I think the answer to that question is a proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Oftentimes you see business leaders so focused on their day-to-day, and there is a lot to think about on their own business and their own world, that they end up kind of isolating themselves, right? If you really want to be resilient, you need to be exposed to other ways of thinking. You need to be exposed to other trends that you might not be able to see in your own, let's say, industry or bubble. And so speaking with other people, collaborating with other people, even if it's not just for a business transaction, just getting to know other people in the space that are thinking about similar things. And more importantly, also the diversity of thought is the most important part of that equation. So don't just go to your local industry group and meet with other, executives in the exact same field, dealing the exact same stuff with us as you. Go to other executives in completely different fields, right? Talk with them about what challenges are they facing, understand their world, their view on the world, what's happening, what are macroeconomic trends that might affect you, how do you manage them, right? And those are the best opportunities to learn. And so even as an investor, that's something in my previous job at Fondation that I invested kind of across industries, across asset classes, across Quebec. That was something that I think that they did really well, was just kind of bringing together these CEOs, etc., from completely different industries, bringing them together, once or twice a year, just to have these conversations. And that was something that we always found incredibly rewarding, and we always got very good feedback. So if you don't have the privilege of having an investor that does that for you, go out there and do that proactively yourself. You will be much the wiser and much more resilient in your work that you do as a result.
Such a good question. I think that for any businesses, it's important that leadership set a vision and mission for everybody else to follow. Resiliency is important. And if you've got a strong leader who is setting that vision and getting the leadership team on board to charge towards that goal, I think you'll see a lot of success. So, I'm interested to see how that all fits into the energy efficiency space in the next few years. I think people are really starting to shift their minds, and I'm excited to see where the industry goes.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I have a passion for fashion and beauty. Two of these guests are responsible for at least half of my clothing and beauty products at home. Jen Harper, the founder and CEO at Cheekbone Beauty, and Annette Nguyen, founder at Schwab Club. I also discovered, alongside our listeners, two phenomenal brands and their leaders. Mireille, Dr. Mimi Vega, founder at Vegan Biome, and the dynamic duo of Elaine Kim Smith and Leslie Hulaf, co-owners at Lover's Tempo.
My answer is always consistency. I feel I don't have any super skills, I guess, that I was like, oh, this is why I've gotten to this point in life. I'm just very consistent. So, every day for the last 7 years have done something to work on Cheekbone to move the brand forward. So consistency is always my answer in that world. If you're consistent and you don't give up, then whatever you're working on, it can't fail.
So I think speaking from the Schwab Club's perspective, I would say community is what is going to get you where you need to be. It can't just be profit. I mean, it's easy to say profit, planet, people, but I think my focus has been on people and community. And I think that when times are rough, or when COVID happens, or when you need to make difficult decisions, if you have a community that is behind you, the community understands your mission, understands what you're doing, why you're doing it, they will get you where you need to go. So I trust community a lot in the process.
I really thought about that because I knew it was coming. Protect, restore, adapt. That formula. I don't want to be cheesy, but we got to protect what we have, restore what we lost, and adapt to the evolving world. Obviously, there's various priorities. We are so fortunate to live in this country and to have environment as a priority. Let's make it a priority. Some other parts of the world just can't afford to have that, in their priorities. It's still there, but, they do different things. So I do believe, I trust the process as well. There are some regulations. I don't think it's going to help as much as really owning that planet of ours and protecting it, basically.
If you're talking about kind of resiliency and the collective resilience of humanity, I think one of the big pieces of the puzzle that's missing, to be frank, is accountability for larger corporations. I think we see small businesses being resilient all the time, especially over the last 4 years. I mean, it's been curveball after curveball after curveball. I think that all of the small businesses that I know are being resilient every single day. And I would love to see the consequences and the accountability for larger corporations be more.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think the last 4 years have been so hard on small businesses. And we've seen the stories recently, actually, just last week, we know about the wildfires in Jasper. We had one of our small retailers there just email us a story that they've lost every single thing that they owned, through the fires. And their email to us was talking about how their business was still standing. Their main priority is to open their doors and to ensure us that they were going to pay their bills. And for us, it's like, if that doesn't show resilience, I don't know what does. And so I think from a small business level, we see that resilience of small business owners getting up and opening their doors and doing what it takes to make it happen. And we really just need to see change on a larger scale, some support, the government level, larger corporations, to kind of boost our morale because we're doing it every day.
They say that each day you have 3 votes to change the food system. And if you snack as much as I do, that number only increases, which is why I was so excited to grow the food and beverage section of the Resilience Report this past year. In 2024, you loved hearing from our next guests, Missy Shafok, Director of Global Nutrition and Sustainability at Taco Bell, David Cote, co-founder and superhero at Loop Mission, Kim Shakal, who is the co-owner and director of sales and marketing at Equifruit, and Jonathan Defoe, who is the founder and CEO at Food Hero.
I would say it's really the fundamental work that keeps the business going cannot be forgotten while trying to stand out and be different, right? Because the regulations and laws will always exist, and they're expanding, like I mentioned, at unprecedented levels. And it's important work, and it's a lot of work. But then you have to focus because you can't do it all. So focus on what will truly make a difference and on what can be measured and reported, because what gets measured gets managed.
I think it's to slow down a little bit. And so when you have a business, you often forget the why you started it, right? And you often don't realize all the collateral impact that you have by creating that product or offering that service, right? And sometimes you need to take time a little bit and the distanciation from your daily job or daily life or daily business to really look at where are the holes, what are we wasting here? It's not necessarily product or something. It might be time. It might be a space. You might realize that your space has never been used or your office is always empty. Is there a next door neighbor that can actually use it and spend less money on it, right? Is there a time from someone that I realize maybe you could save by doing something else? Like the circular economy is in everything. Circularity is in everything, right? So it's to take time to look at all that waste, that's not only material, and to try to use it at its most, really, which is what we've always done as a civilization. We just forgot about it.
I think that bravery and resilience go hand in hand. And that's the first word that comes to mind. The tough decisions require bravery, whether that's going out on a limb because you think that this is the right thing to do, or saying the thing that nobody else is comfortable saying, just call it out so that you can just kickstart that change. Bravery is part of business in a big way. I think the most successful entrepreneurs were really brave, and especially in those early years, just being an entrepreneur, waking up in the morning and deciding that they're going to just follow their dream, that requires bravery. And so bring other people in your circle that can support you in that.
Yeah, that's a really, really good one. Really good one. So I'm going to try to come up with original answers here because I already touched on, staying healthy mentally and physically and emotionally. So my recommendation is learn about human nature, study human nature. That's something I've been doing recently, and I wish I would have done that, 20 years ago. So I'm reading psychology books now, or skimming through psychology books, using ChatGPT to ask questions on that topic, because refers to also social media that I mentioned. Like it's ridiculous how human beings can be manipulated, but when you understand, how it works, first you're going to be protecting yourself. Number two, you will be more successful in your ventures because at the end of the day, like commercial enterprises are successful when they answer human needs and they understand how human brains are operating. So understanding human nature as a general topic is very important. And I'm referring to things like biases, not like necessarily like the super heavy, expert type of stuff, like just the basic stuff. So that's one. And two, I mentioned it earlier, like be very careful to not expose yourself to negative stuff, like as much as you can. Like if you need to be like me, I still need to be aware of what's going on in the world, but I'm giving myself some sort of quota where, I'm just allowing a couple of minutes a day or, so because it's like right now, I think it's a big competitive advantage, a big differentiator. If you stay in a positive mindset and you're exposing yourself to positive stuff as opposed to the contrary, you will be living a much better life and you will be performing much more as well. Like you'll be more resilient for sure.
The next section of our Best of 2024 is that of corporate culture and strategy, arguably what makes this all possible for business and leaders going forward. Our featured guests included Dr. Marie-Hélène Pelletier, author of The Resilience Plan, a strategic approach to optimize your work and health, and Lori Sates, the founder and CEO of Zen Rabbit.
Well, I'm going to say it will take for them to think strategically about their resilience, talk strategically about it, and then implement behaviors that are strategic. All three. Think that way, talk that way, and behave that way.
It will take what we've been talking about this whole time. It will take personal responsibility for doing whatever you got to do in terms of building your resilience, and I say resilience, and because typically I think it's applied to managing challenging work situations. But I'm talking about resilience in every aspect, going back to the first of how do you define well-being, every aspect, resilience of your immune system, resilience of your emotional balance, resilience in every aspect. And you're the only one who has the ability to affect that. And so that's what it's going to take, is that learning those tools and whatever techniques, the ones we've talked about, there are plenty more out there, but finding what works for you. That's really the key. Is there's not a one thing fits all, but what works for you and figuring out what that is.
And finally, we're rounding things out with an area close to my heart, manufacturing. With global supply chain issues, inflation, and more, being a leader in the space is not always easy. Our next guests show us how it is done with integrity and compassion. Christian Schmidt, owner at Black Sheep Mattress Company, Tamara Meckler, co-founder and COO at Nutshell Coolers, and Jeff White and Carmen Puri, co-founders at Kula Partners. Bonus points, Jeff, Carmen, and I are now all part of Manucast, the manufacturing podcast collective.
Tough question. I mean, I think there's so much to do in the sustainability space and then making our systems resilient to what's like, I think there's a lot of change coming. I lately, it changes, but lately I keep coming back to this one thing of it's so simple, maybe it's too simple, but it's just doing the right thing. And we all know what that is, and sometimes that means self-sacrifice. Sometimes that means, maybe that means like this business I'm doing doesn't work, and I have to do it a little differently. And that's hard on the ego, that kind of thing. But I think that's kind of a North Star for a lot of people. I wouldn't be doing it for money, or I wouldn't be doing it for those sorts of things. I don't think that's sustainable. And the other way to think of that word. But yeah, it's exciting. There's a lot of opportunity too. There's so much to be done, whether you're existing business or starting new.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, and from my experience building Nutshell, I think deep empathy is key. So when we approach problems, I think we need to think about the full system and all the people involved, and really work together to create solutions that stand to benefit all. That means taking the time to understand the perspectives and needs of all stakeholders, from your employees to your customers to partners and the environment. And yeah, I think and I found that this process of deep empathy leads to key insights that allow us to make better decisions, build stronger partnerships, prepare for challenges. And I think that's what it means to be resilient. And yeah, I think there's a lot of great examples of that in the circular economy where, stakeholders, including the planet, are brought together and all benefit from a solution and are motivated to make it work. I think circular solutions are efficient and innovative and very attuned to local communities. And, they literally keep resources in a continuous loop, which I think that's just being resilient by design. So I think, paying more attention to those kinds of solutions and really focusing on building empathy with all the stakeholders.
It's weird because, the minute you start blending these things, you usually sound like a conspiracy theorist, and I don't want to get there. But what you say about uncertain times, and of course, part of what you're saying there, there's the climate change component to that is obviously massive, and then the political environment that seems to be just unfolding almost regardless of jurisdiction. I mean, it's easy for Canadians up here to make fun of our American friends, but man, it's not just there, as we talked about before. And I kind of wonder how much longer we can ignore it. I feel like in some ways businesses and leaders have been able, as I mentioned before, okay, we're at the adult table, we're at the kid table, but once all the food ends up on your lap, I'm not sure it matters. Somebody needs to deal with it. So I guess I would just say, I think maybe what they're going to need for resilience is maybe an openness to reimagining how they engage with the world and how broad their engagement with the world is. I know it's a really broad answer, but
I think, to that point, an awful lot of us could do well with listening more and asking questions and not assuming we have the answers. Really being considerate of the things we hear and then processing that and trying to understand how to leverage what you've learned. There's no question, better off with the input of others.
And that's a wrap on our Best of 2024 episode. Thank you to every single person who has listened this past year, and for proactively choosing to show up and make room for those businesses and leaders trying to make a positive impact. Keep on being that lighthouse, and I cannot wait to see what 2025 has in store for all of us. I love you all so very much and wish you and your loved ones a very happy, safe, and healthy holiday season. I hope that you've enjoyed this week's edition of the Resilience Report. If you would like to hear and see more, be sure to check out @The Resilience Report on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until we connect again, remember, even on the darkest of days, we all have the opportunity to be a lighthouse for others as we collectively pursue better, more resilient business.